Hi everyone and welcome to WorldView. I'm Beatrice.
And I'm Donald.
WorldView is a podcast where we explore everyone's perspective on all things that can broaden our worldview.
You know, South Africa needs you guys, needs people that are young, smart individuals like yourselves.
In the World Cup final last year, when they came to that part of the song, and there was Kulisi, the captain, and that beast next to him, and how they sang it, I got tears in my eyes, and I thought, wow, I wish my grandfather could see this. He would say, great, fantastic, look at these people, how they sing this song.
I had the voice inside of me saying, Iain, you wanted inspiration to continue with just this journey to train leaders to transform Africa. Iain, look around you. Those are the next generation of leaders in South Africa and in Africa. Don't give up on this journey to train leaders to transform Africa.
I feel quite slow in comparison. I know a few authors who push out full-length novels every week. They have, two of them have had heart attacks though, so I'm not aiming for,
I can't imagine
aiming for that.
It's political suicide to do it.
Right.
It's like Jean-Claude Juncker, the former president of the European Union, said,
right.
It's not that we don't know what to do. It's that if we do it, we'll not be re-elected.
Oh, okay. So they have no incentive to do it.
No incentive.
Okay.
The incentive is all in the wrong direction.
But I think if we look in terms of where we are as a country and as a society, I think we need to find ways to change the way in which we train our educators. You know, I think we are still training them the way we trained them for the past, 20, 30, 50, 40 years. So
yes, I've been asked that many times, and it's definitely been a wonderful journey, an experience which I think most people would not experience in a lifetime.
If I wanted a comfortable lifestyle, firstly, I would have stayed in Cape Town southern suburbs. The leafy suburbs and right next to the mountain. I love being on the mountain. If that was my future and I wanted the comfort of that and the white picket fence, I should have stayed there. But that was never my plan. My faith, what my faith does is that it gets me to live out in faith, to walk towards the darkness rather than away from it.
I had 5 kilometers to go back home. So I drove that little Volkswagen for 5 kilometers.
In reverse.
Circles around over the road, all the way up for 5 kilometers back until I got home.
So, you know, it's a huge problem. And I don't think people really understand the extent to which climate change is already changing the world and the way we live and the impact that it has and the potential impact that it can have on our livelihoods, on our health, on infrastructure.
So I realized that in actual fact, etiquette and social behavior is very much to do with common sense. Where there's a rule, there's a reason. And if you sort of think about it intelligently, not to cause offense to anyone and to put others at ease.
Here I found myself, caught up in my own enthusiasm, talking about how the Babylonian Empire had come, the Assyrian Empire had come and gone, and the Greek Empire had come and gone, and the Roman Empire had come and gone. And the Third Reich came for 1,000 years, but it was smashed. And then I heard myself blurt out in a communist country, in a public meeting, and the Marxist empire must too be smashed.
The way the humans are being controlled by the mainstream media and being taught a load of rubbish that is not true. Truth just doesn't exist anymore. And that's the problem.
I didn't even admit to myself that I was gay when I was at school, because if I did, and if I came out, I would probably have faced serious consequences, including being physically assaulted.
Yes.
So ideological pragmatists say, let's find things that work and use power and authority to institutionalize and implement those things, rather than ideas which in some ways serve our biases and so on.
I'm where I am because I merit it.
It works, obviously.
Yeah, I deserve it. Meanwhile, the people down who have failed in the system, failed in quotes, because the deck is stacked against them in many cases, they feel both resentful and disgruntled, but also bad about themselves because they feel they're failures. Now that's extremely destructive.
And I said to him, "What have you been doing? This is fantastic, And he sort of said, "Well, actually I've been doing Atkins." And I said, "Really? How?" And, it was kind of the first time I'd seen something that happened to a patient of mine that really showed improvement. And so putting these together, it kind of made me think, wow, actually, this is what I need to investigate.
Sometimes it's necessary to tread where angels fear to tread as well. But it's also, the reality is also, it's not that bad, actually. Because a lot of the people are also telling the stories about how bad things are nowhere near the bottom of the pyramid, and therefore they're not experiencing the so-called bad things that are happening here, and therefore it's kind of saying you need to gain some perspective, because actually the entire world is aflame right now. No one knows what's going on. Everybody's just kind of winging their way through it, and so then might as well then wing your way through it at home.
I just had this terrible feeling that I can understand authoritarian states, because you can't have that. How can you have that? You should not, those people should be thrown out. And then you rectify yourself by saying, okay, but we can't do it that way.
Clients would say, these people don't understand the economy. They understand much better often than the critic does. And if we're to avoid this, the critical importance is not to allow aspirations in our country to die. You've got to sell the message that your life can get better.
And in the kind of age that we live in, it's been so bastardized. And I really feel like there is a movement that still exists, but I really feel like any musician that's living at this time who is writing, just do something worthwhile with it. If the big names of this world, the big hard hitters, God, if they actually spoke out, wow.
And I think it might have been Milton Friedman or Hayek, one of the two, who said, there's no such, you will never find a government giving up the power that it has gained. You'll never see governments shutting down the programs that they started in the first place. So you should never give them an excuse to do that. So
it's actually easy to bring about liberty. It's not difficult. You just need a dedicated minority to be relentlessly pushing for this. And what we have, unfortunately, in South Africa is a far too small minority. You can almost just say it's a bunch of individuals.
I think the best advice anyone can ever give anyone is to keep going from thing to thing to thing until you find the thing that makes you come alive. Like the thing that lights up your eyes and when people talk to you about it, you kind of can't help yourself but get excited, and then just do that thing,
People are sick of it, They actually want to see what is going right in this country. And that's the stuff that we need to concentrate on, and not this other BS that we have to dish up. Because the assumption is that is what people want. That's the assumption. It's not based in fact. You did not ask people if it's okay with them if you give them this rubbish all of the time.
In terms of the conflict of South Africa, militarily speaking, the conflict between black and white, there was no winner. The winner was South Africa.
I still believe in a country, and I think eventually with your generation doing what you're doing now, and with the older wisdom of the older generation, we just might take hands and make this a great country again.
We had a long period in Britain of politicians who were very earnest and stage managed and, desperate not to put a foot wrong, always keen to say the right thing. I mean, Gordon Brown, who was our Prime Minister at the end of 2007 to 2010, he famously in an interview refused 10 times to name his favourite biscuit, his favourite cookie, because he didn't want to give the wrong answer.
But God, friends, I want you to know, God loves to make a comma out of a full stop. With God, there is never a full stop, there's a comma. And then it says, Peter was kept in prison, comma, but the church was earnestly praying for him to God. And that's the summary of our ministry. With God, there is a comma, and we go on and we pray, and a miracle happened. And I pray that it will happen to many people, for your ministry, for this wonderful ministry that you have, and we all do our thing, that with God, all things are possible.
Because it comes all back to the fact that everyone is in this industry because of passion. And passion, I think, makes our industry quite open in a way. And so, yeah, today, like this year, is the right time to start your game business.
If you are a disrespectful, ill-disciplined person, it will come through your music, but so will the good, you know?
Please get involved. I think life owes you nothing. It's what you make of it.
I am the presenter of WorldView, and WorldView is a podcast where we explore everybody's perspective on all things that can broaden our world view.
It's worth saying, though, by the way, that the key function of the modern educational system, particularly at higher and secondary level, is not education, it's certification. It's giving out bits of paper that people use to get access to high-paid jobs. And what we currently have is an elite who owe their position and status to possession of these bits of paper.
And what you're saying is there are profound structural problems with this generation. We need to be able to connect with them now. It might not translate into a vote in this election or the next election, but sort of 10 years' time, we want these people to know we were there for them. We understood them, we fought their battles for them. And now that they're starting to pay tax, now that they care about voting and are invested in actual local and national politics, we want them to turn to us.
Huge progress that we've made. Poverty today, we are on the verge of completely getting rid of poverty. It's going to return, it's going to come back, but we've made progress. Let's be honest about it. And the world today is a much better place, and it's a much safer place as well than when it was 100 years ago. So maybe it's time for us for a kind of a big reset, and just imagine how things are going to happen after that. And now we are really going to cook with all these new technologies.
And people must understand that that is the consequence of their vote. And until people make sure that the politicians are scared of the voters, they're going to get nothing out of it. They've got to change their vote if the government fails them.
Well, wildlife, you know, and the wonderful safari parks that you have in South Africa are, you know, in the DNA of South Africa. They're your heritage. Long before, you know, humans populated South Africa in the numbers that now do, there was wildlife all over, and you've got a precious heritage.
Studying history is that it makes your life more interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting, and like everything that's interesting, it will therefore inform your present.
You know, we're the only country in the world, and I'm gonna mention this, that wasn't allowed to buy wine or cigarettes or stuff like that. I think they concentrate on the wrong things in our country instead of worrying about getting a plan to save the farm murders.
I did want to say, when Martin said that he would support the SANDF reintegrating the Western Cape back into South Africa, I wanted to ask which military, because we don't really have the capacity.
The paratroopers.
We have a few paratroopers where, actually, then I have to ask which plans. Are they going to revive Mango and they're going to drop the guys off Mango plans?
Well, what is the real debt if we were to use the same accounting methodology that we have to use corporately and privately? It's about 210 trillion. That's what we actually owe. Okay? And you know what? You don't tend to see that in print.
But I think the essence of the National Democratic Revolution is that what needs to happen is we need to create a society in which we move away from exclusive privileges by a few defined by race into a society in which there's non-racialism.
And the key is the government should be small. The government should be efficient, and it should be run by technocrats who don't like to be in the front page of newspapers and on TV and 5 million Twitter followers. These are people that are there simply to do an implementation role.
Because it is the worst at times, it's the best at times. And your courage and your compassion and your competence shines bright for the darkness of the age. All the sheepdogs, all the warriors who man the ramparts in this dark and desperate hour, and believe in who you are, believe in what you do. We need you. We need you very, very badly right now.
Baie dankie. Jy het ons dag gemaak en ons sê salute, viva, aluta, continua.